everyone. Welcome to part 2 of memory. I want to do a quick activity that's going to illustrate what's called the primacy-recency effect, this idea that we remember things at the beginning and ends of lists and kind of muck up the middle. So if you get the chance, I want you to get out a pen and a piece of paper if you don't have one, which you should if you're watching this and taking notes. So what I want you to do is I'm going to read you a list, and the list is on the next page, so try not to look. I'm going to read you the list, and I want you to, in 15 seconds, recall as many words as you can. And then we'll talk about it. So let me read the list to you. Bed, rest, awake, tired, dream, wake, snooze, blanket, doze, slumber, snore, nap, peace, yawn, drowsy. Write down as many of those words as you can remember. I'll give you 15 seconds starting now. Five more seconds. All right, stop. Now, on your list, if you have the word bed, good, that was on our list, and it was at the beginning of the word list I gave you, so it may be easier to remember. Same with the word drowsy. If you have the word drowsy, that was toward the end of the list. Now cross-reference your list with the word list I have here. And I have one question. Did you write down the word sleep? If you did, you made that up. I didn't say that. Check the word list. This is what's known as confabulation. It's a memory error where we fill in gaps in memory with fabricated things that just seem to make sense. So this list was all about sleep. So it makes sense if I would say, hey, sleep's got to be in there. And sometimes we can do that with events. We confabulate. We make up parts of the event that didn't really happen but seem to make sense. That may be why you question yourself on the authenticity of a memory. But that's a primacy-recency effect. We remember things at the beginning and end of a list, not so much the middle. So this is why I tell you, if you have to do a presentation or something, and you didn't do the best job, try to go somewhere in the middle. It'll be harder to remember you if the teacher is grading them all at the same point after. Now, if they're grading as you're speaking, then you're kind of, you're out of luck there. But if they grade them all at the same time later, it's best to be somewhere in the middle. You may get a better grade. And let's talk about retrieval. So retrieval is the act of grabbing memories out of our long-term memory so that we can work with them within our working memory. We encode so much information. It's prolific. We encode everything. But it would be useless if we couldn't retrieve it. So the reason I put this retriever here, is to help make this process. Hopefully it'll give you another memory cue when you're recalling it later. The retriever of retrieval. If I just keep saying those sounds, I'm using that sound to help reinforce that memory as well as imagery. We have what's called available information and accessible information. Pretty much all of the information is available. It's what's stored, and accessible is what we can access, because sometimes we just can't remember things. We use clues or cues in our environment, and we try to make those, see, I always misspeak on this, but we try to make those cues as specific as possible. The encoding specificity principle. So it says, to the extent the retrieval cue matches or overlaps the memory trace of the experience. So with retrieval, I picked a retriever because the sound overlaps substantially, right? And I'm trying to make it, even though it's a dog, and we all love dogs, a very specific type of dog with Americana vibes, right? So, yeah, I'm trying to elaborate and encode this information in your brain using a very specific prompt of a retriever. So another example of a way you can use this at home is testing in the same room that you study in, or study in the same room you test in. Sometimes the area around us can prompt us, like maybe what music we were listening to, or what pen we were using, where we were sitting, where we were looking when we were talking about this specific concept. All of these things can provide cues to help us remember. Sometimes let's think about when we're studying and retrieving information. If you make note cards, you try to remember the who, what, when, where, and how of things, and it doesn't necessarily work out. Sometimes you try to recall things, you're doing a definition, you're like, oh, retrieval. Retrieval is the process of accessing our stored memories. And you check your note card and you see that you maybe have most of the information or you're missing some of it. Well, sometimes the testing effect can be a part there where we're trying to pull out those memories. When we can pull that information out and rehearse it on a note card, the more likely we can pull the information one time, the more likely we are to remember it in the future. So that may be why you see questions that are on like an early exam come up on a final again, because they're hoping that you've learned that concept. Sometimes we can forget certain information. Retrieval-induced forgetting. This is a small effect that's not likely to happen, but sometimes if we strengthen certain parts of a concept, like the definition, maybe we'll forget other relevant information. Like maybe you're studying for anatomy and physiology and you remember this part of the body, what it does, where it is, how to spell it. Maybe you focus so much on how to spell it and you remembered that you forgot what it does or where it is. But again, very small effect there. Really quickly, I want to go over the different types of memories. When we talk about memories, we have all different sorts of memories. Now we understand the process, let's look at specific memories. Episodic memories, remembering episodes in our life. What did you do on Monday? When was your first date? Those are episodes. Think of like a Netflix series about you. Episodes of things that happened in your life. Then we have semantic memories. These are our storehouse of more or less permanent knowledge. So who's the 44th President of the United States? Who delivered the famous I Have a Dream speech? Hopefully you know those answers based on the pictures. But that's our semantic memory. Okay, that's like more or less permanent knowledge. We're not thinking about it all the time, but we know it. We also have collective memories. I have fun discussing this with my students. Hopefully you all, if you want to shoot me an email, because I'm learning about coastal Carolina culture. I'm from Chicago, so I love hearing about your collective memories about the area. These are memories that people in a group share, so this is like a community memory. So remembering local customs, historical events in a unique fashion that may be different from outsiders looking in. So if you have any of those about coastal Carolina, specifically Washington, I would love to hear them, because I just love hearing all this stuff about my students, like where they like to hang out, what they call certain events. I love it. Autobiographical memories are a type of episodic memories. I'm not going to ask you to differentiate between the two, because I don't think that's fair, because even I sometimes am like, ooh, right? They're very similar. Episodic memories can be things that have happened to us or around us, but autobiographical memories are specifically related to events that happened in our life. So, I don't know if that helps you, but they're very similar. But episodic memories can be something we witnessed for someone else, too, whereas autobiographical are specifically related to us. Flashbulb memories. I know I'm going through this quickly, but I feel like with all the reading you're doing, I don't have to spend as much time on this part. Flashbulb memories are memories like, the old photographs when they took the really bright light with the picture? That's a flashbulb. Flashbulb memories are vivid memories in learning important news. It's kind of like so emotionally scarring that we can remember a lot of details or misremember a lot of details about events and where we were when certain things happened. Like when we heard Kobe Bryant died in the helicopter crash. A lot of my students can remember all the details about that. Granted, it was only a year ago, but still, the point remains. Maybe you can remember where you were when the terrorist attacks of 9/11 happened. Or maybe your parents or grandparents can remember where they were when President Kennedy was assassinated. There are all these very strong emotional ties, important news. We can remember certain facts about, and these can vary based on the person. Like some of those are bigger events, but maybe you remember where you were when a really important court case was decided, or when this celebrity died. There's a lot of them. They're very strong emotional content. That's the key, and they're very distinctive. Now, the ways to improve our memory. We kind of touched on this in the last video, but constructing meaningful cues that remind us of the original experience. So cues should be distinctive and not associated with other memories. Make them very specific to that certain topic or event, right? We can't use the same cue for a bunch of memories. You can't trigger a bunch of memories necessarily without muddying the information. Mnemonic devices or other memory aids and tricks. Peg word technique is rhyming associated with numbers. I know this sounds really odd, but some people find it very useful. 1 sun, 2 shoe, 3 knee. So those kind of rhyming things can definitely help you. Method of loci, it's a visualization about place sort of activity. Acronyms and acrostics. This is like the idea of scuba diving. SCUBA stands for Self-Contained Underwater Breathing Apparatus. A lot of my students didn't know that, but it's an acronym. It's not actually what it's called. Rhymes, chunking, or putting the information in smaller bits. Kind of like when you're typing in your credit card to give Jeff Bezos your money on Amazon. Okay? You're going to type in your credit card number probably in 4-digit groups. That's chunking. Remembering phone numbers based on area code, first 3 digits, last 4 digits, that's chunking. And using imagery can significantly help with improving our memory. Now, really quickly, we're going to cover kinds of memory biases and errors. Tip of the tongue phenomenon. It's exactly what it sounds like. When people say, oh, it's on the tip of my tongue, it means you are failing to retrieve something from your memory, and it's combined with the feeling that the retrieval is imminent. Like you feel like you know what you're going to say, but you just can't remember it, and then you remember it in the shower or someplace where it's not relevant anymore. Another memory bias is schematas. We're going to talk about these because these kind of can lend themselves to stereotypes. We use them as memory templates, have a lot to do with our biases. When we have certain expectations about a scenario, we tend to rely on those schematas or those stereotypes, so we don't have to exert as much cognitive effort. So if I asked you, hey, what's in the Beaufort County Community College library? You'll probably tell me something like, oh, well, there's books and tables and computers and desks, which, yes, but you're just giving me a template because of what you know consists, what libraries contain. You're not actually giving me Beaufort's specific library unless you're giving me a walkthrough. You're kind of using that shortcut. This is a great video on false memories. Why didn't the picture pop up? So, we're going to talk about that misinformation effect with Elizabeth Loftus, and this is Dr. Julia Shaw. She does a study on planting false memories in people, and I think it's really interesting. It talks about how we can make people believe that certain events happened in their life without them actually happening. So check out that video, and then proceed, pause me, watch the video, because it talks about how those false memories are like so pervasive. Once they're implanted, people can really think they remembered them. In the Dr. Shaw's video, she convinces people that they got into fights where police were called when it never happened. And she does it very systematically. You'll see the techniques that she uses, but all of these things can affect memory. Who's telling us the story? What credence do they have? What's backing them up? How are they proving it? It may convince us that this thing happened when it really didn't. There have been different studies on the topic, but one of the ones that I enjoy the most is in 2002. There was a study by Braun et al., and they asked people taking a trip to Disneyland if they went inside and met Bugs Bunny. And a large majority of people said yes. This is a false memory. Bugs Bunny is Looney Tunes. Bugs Bunny is not Disney. So they convinced a bunch of people that they met Bugs Bunny, and these people were adamant that they did. And sometimes this happens. This can be affected by leading questions, so questions that kind of direct us to a particular response, misinterpretation of events, conversations with co-witnesses, and our own expectations of an event. So if someone else saw something and they saw it differently than you, and you start talking to them, you might second guess what you saw, especially if their story is so different than yours. Come on. And these are, just for fun, we have some sins of memory, so things that can affect our memory. Transience and absent-mindedness, blocking, misattribution, suggestibility, bias, and persistence. So these are all pretty self-explanatory. I'm not going to read the chart, but it just kind of it demonstrates Schachter's ideas of things that can affect our memories. Specifically, where our attention is. So all of these are based on where our attention is, how we attribute the memory. A lot about suggestibility. And so the sin, so to speak, depends on what type of memory. So is it forgetting information, distorting or misconstruing information, or is it just intrusion? Something's kind of bombarding our brain. So make sure you read that section. And then lastly, we're going to talk about encoding failure. Sometimes with encoding, we just don't do it right. Sometimes we just don't remember things properly. And so forgetting is one of those things involved in encoding failure. You can't talk about memory without talking about forgetting. So forgetting is the loss of information from our long-term memory. So if you look at these pictures up at the top of your slide, which one of those is the picture of a nickel? The true picture of a nickel? I think the answer is C. See, I don't even know it. How many times have I done this lecture? Sometimes we don't remember details that aren't important to us. I'm not going to remember, where the president's position, I think it's Jefferson. Oh my goodness, talk about memory lapse. Where the date is, if it has "In God We Trust" and what way on it. We remember what's necessary. When you pull out a bunch of coins out of your pocket, you know the nickel's the smooth one and it's kind of thicker, right? Or I don't know, however you want to remember it. We don't remember every little detail. So sometimes with encoding and forgetting, we don't remember things that we never properly stored in the first place anyway. So forgetting can be a lot of different factors, including misdirection of our attention, misattribution, and encoding failures. So a lot in this chapter. Make sure you read it, and let me know if you have any questions. As always, I hope you all have a great week.